All right, let's get right into it. We're going to follow the journey of a company that was, well, drowning in data chaos. We're talking manual reports, databases on the verge of crashing, you know the drill. And we'll see exactly how they build a powerful automated data platform on AWS. We're going to look at their mistakes, and trust me, there were some big ones, but also their huge wins and the key decisions that totally changed the game for them.
So let me ask you something. Does this sound familiar? The business team needs numbers, and they need them yesterday. But for your team, every single request is a fire drill, right? It's this frantic manual scramble that feels super risky and just painfully slow. If you've ever felt that pain, then yeah, you're in the right place.
You know, for the company we're looking at, this wasn't just a theory. It was their everyday nightmare. Their analysts were actually forced to run queries directly on the live production database. I mean, that's like trying to do delicate surgery with a sledgehammer. It puts the whole application at risk for your actual customers. And every single report meant someone had to manually export a CSV file, which, of course, is just asking for errors. So what was the result? Total chaos. Finance had one set of numbers, marketing had another, and nobody trusted the data anymore. They'd completely lost their single source of truth.
And here's what that whole messy process looked like, step by step. First, a super risky query on the live database. Then, a manual export to a CSV. And finally, someone crossing their fingers hoping the Excel report they built by hand was actually right. This wasn't just slow, it was a ticking time bomb. It couldn't scale, and they knew. They absolutely knew they had to do something different and do it fast.
So how did they get out of this mess? Well, it wasn't a magic bullet. It was a journey, really, through 4 distinct stages. They started in what we're calling ad hoc chaos. Then they moved to building a centralized data lake. After that, it was all about activated analytics, actually using the data. And finally, they arrived at a mature platform. This journey is basically our roadmap for the rest of this explainer.
Okay, so their first big step was a really important one. Get the analysts out of the production database. The plan was to create a single, central place for all their data on AWS, a data lake with Amazon S3 as its foundation. Sounds great, right? Well, their first attempt actually created a whole new kind of headache.
Yeah, they fell right into one of the most common traps out there. They treated their brand new S3 bucket like a giant digital junk drawer, just throwing all the raw data in there with zero organization. This wasn't a data lake, it was a data swamp, and the result was painful. Whenever they tried to ask a question of this data, the query was unbelievably slow and cost a fortune. Why? Because the system had to scan every single file, every single time, just to find one piece of information.
So the fix was this really elegant idea called partitioning. It's actually pretty simple. Instead of having one massive folder with everything, they started organizing their data into a logical folder structure. A really common way to do this is by date. So you'd have a folder for the year, inside that a folder for the month, and then for the day. So now if you want to know what were the sales last Tuesday, the query engine knows exactly where to look. It doesn't have to scan your entire history. This one change was an absolute game changer for speed and, you guessed it, cost.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the 3 big moves that turned that swamp into a clean, fast data lake. First, that partitioned folder structure we just talked about. Huge. Second, they stopped using CSVs and switched to an optimized file format called Parquet. Now this is super important. Think of a CSV as reading a whole book page by page, row by row. Parquet is like having an index where you can just grab the specific columns you need. So if you only need customer names and purchase amounts, you don't have to read all the other data. It's way, way faster. And third, they brought in AWS Glue to be their data librarian. It automatically crawls all the data, figures out what's there, and creates a central catalog, like a card catalog for their data lake.
All right, so now they have this beautiful, organized data lake. What's next? Well, they were ready for the next big stage, actually activating all that data. Because, it's not enough to just store data. You have to be able to use it to get insights. And that meant building an automated pipeline to process everything and get it ready for analysis.
And when you compare this to their old way of doing things, wow, it's a night and day difference. Now raw data automatically lands in S3. As soon as it arrives, an AWS Glue ETL job kicks off. ETL just stands for extract, transform, and load. It basically grabs the raw data, cleans it up, puts it in a nice structured format, and adds it to the catalog. It's only after all that happens the analysts can query the data using their tools. The key here is they are completely separate from the production database. The whole thing is automated, it can scale, and it's safe.
And what's really cool about this new setup is that it lets them use the right tool for the right job.
So for those quick one-off questions, just exploring the data, they could use Amazon Athena. It's serverless, you just pay for the queries you run, and it works directly on the files in S3. But for the really heavy lifting, the complex analytics, the big company dashboards that everyone relies on, that's where they use the power of Amazon Redshift, which is a full-blown data warehouse built for performance.
So at this point, they've got a working platform, which is great. But the journey wasn't over. The final stage is all about mastery. It's the stuff you do day in and day out that really separates a good platform from a truly great one. And this means their focus had to shift to things like governance, security, and just constantly optimizing everything.
And this right here is a really critical point. Becoming a mature data organization isn't about just buying more shiny new tools. It's about mastering your processes. A huge chunk of their effort, as you can see, went into governance and security, basically making sure the right people have access to the right data and no one else. The rest of their time was spent in this constant cycle of tuning for better performance and, this is a big one, optimizing for cost.
And check this out. This shows you just how big the payoff was. By doing some really smart but simple things like setting up S3 lifecycle policies to automatically move older, less used data to cheaper storage tiers, and by making sure their compute resources weren't oversized, they were able to slash their monthly AWS bill. It's such a great reminder that smart architecture isn't just about making things fast, it's about making them efficient and cost-effective too. So after seeing this whole journey, what's the big takeaway? We can actually boil down their entire transformation into a simple 4-step roadmap that you can adapt for your own company.
Really, it all comes down to this. Step 1, centralize. Get all your data into a structured S3 data lake. Create that single source of truth. Step 2, catalog. Use a tool like AWS Glue to make sure it's all discoverable so you don't end up with a data swamp. Step 3, query. Give your people the tools they need like Athena or Redshift to actually get answers from the data. And finally, step 4, master. Start treating your platform like a living product that needs constant care and feeding when it comes to governance, security, and cost.
And that leads us to probably the single most important lesson in all of this. It's about a shift in your mindset. A modern data platform isn't a one-and-done project that you finish and walk away from. No way. It's a product. It's something you own, you manage, and you are constantly evolving as your business changes.
So, I'll leave you with this one final question to think about. When you look at your own organization, at your own data situation, what's that very first, most critical step you need to take to start moving away from the chaos and toward clarity?